Welcome, everyone, to another exciting edition, the first edition of 2025 of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm here with Eric Epler. Eric, let him hear your voice.
Hello, how are we?
And Dan Sostek. Dan, let him hear your voice.
Howdy. Welcome to 2025.
All right, so you new listeners, you'll know who they are when they chime into the rest of the podcast. And for you longtime listeners, you already knew who they were. Guys, it's 2025. How'd New Year's Eve go for you? How we feeling heading into the new year?
I feel pretty good. It was a quiet New Year's. Obviously, watched a little football, as always, and took in the new year. I think I was in bed by 12:35, so got to see the ball drop in New York City, and then hightailed it to bed. That's what old guys do, Brian.
I still make it to midnight, but I got to say this year was the lamest year for, performances.
Yes.
All the New Year's Eve shows were terrible.
I agree completely. I
was shocked that they didn't, you would have thought someone like Sabrina Carpenter or Shabuzi would make their way or something. And it was a bunch of people I'd never heard of, but I wasn't watching too much.
Shabuzi was so I was down in the command center. For people who don't know, I call it the command center, which is my man cave. I have 4 TVs down here. I think the smallest one's 60 inches. I had all the New Year's Eve shows on. My wife and I were just kind of popping in and out depending on who was on. Shabuzi did go on the country music one.
Yeah, I saw he was in Nashville, but you think he'd be on one of the main ones. But maybe he wants that country, that rub.
He would have been far better than, they had a bunch of, I like the occasional throwback act and stuff like that, but it was just I don't know. It was
I think
bad,
the highlight was the CNN one with Cooper and Andy Cohen just being, they're pretty drunk. They were just drunk the whole time.
They were, but you know what? They do that every year now. And there was a lot of nonsense in between.
That to me is just so lame and tired, with Cooper getting hammered after 3 shots.
Yeah.
And it's whatever.
Don't laugh at me here, but 2 years ago, one of the networks, the one that now has the college football playoff, had Miley Cyrus's New Year's show, and it was really good. And they actually took her off because of the college football playoff, obviously. So, but there just weren't a lot of good. Shabuzi was pretty good. I did catch him. Jelly Roll was pretty good.
I'm tired of Jelly Roll. He's too much. He's everywhere now. It's really annoying.
Compared to everything else that was on though, Dan, he was pretty good, because there was not a lot of really good acts on. I was surprised by that. I
was watching the Seth Rogen film Observe and Report with some friends. So underrated 2009 comedy. So,
geez almighty, we're going way back. Obviously, the football, how we feel about the football, being played. Penn State still rocking and rolling in this thing.
I was talking about this, and we kind of said it when they advanced, or when they lost the Big Ten game, is they might really just benefit from losing the Big Ten championship game, because to get to play SMU and Boise State instead of I'd rather play those two teams. They're both good teams, but I'd rather play those two teams and have to play Ohio State in the second round. And I think that they played 2 teams that are pretty good stories and good football teams, but they weren't going to be able to match up to, how loaded that Penn State team was. And they hung around for a little bit, and G&T got 1 or 2 good plays going. But I wonder I haven't looked at the Vegas future odds, but Penn State's got to be feeling pretty good, especially now with, granted, obviously it's comes via tragedy, but they even get an extra, day of rest over their opponent because of the delay in the Sugar Bowl. Penn State's in pretty, I think. Then in yesterday's game, that Jeremiah Smith kid is, it's crazy to think, when you watch guys like that, it's crazy to think a year ago they were playing high school football. That kid, that guy is probably, someone said this and I agree, he's probably a top 20 wide receiver on the planet, including NFL players. He's that good, and he has to play college football for another 2 years. And last year he was going against, kids that are in their model UNs. It's always the fun part of this time of year.
3 weeks ago, we were firing Ryan Day, and now it looks like, they looked unbeatable against Oregon.
Someone said, people want me to apologize for all the nasty things I posted about Ryan Day and posting his address. And I said, and then the person was like, you should be thanking me. I was the one that got him to shape up. And they look like a completely different football team. And I'm assuming that Ohio State is now the Vegas favorite to win the championship. I would imagine after that,
Gotta be.
after that performance.
And a big Pennsylvania connection there, tie with Will Howard, your former Downingtown Whippets quarterback. Eric Epler and I got to see him a good couple times, I think, or a bit the year that Central Dauphin made it to the state championship. I still find it hard to believe that Central Dauphin team, Max Mosey playing quarterback, beat them. But I remember early in that game, Epler, Howard threw like a 70-yard touchdown pass. It was one of the prettiest spirals you'll see. And I was like, oh man, Central Dauphin's in trouble, but they just had such a scrappy group. But now you see him come back around, and it's kind of funny, Dan, you and I have texted about it a little bit. They kind of booted Kyle McCord, who ended up leading the country in passing yardage and had a really good, a record-breaking ACC year, right?
Yeah, the record-breaking 5 interceptions against the University of Pittsburgh.
Oh, here we go with Pitt. You know, if you want to go down the Pitt rabbit hole, we could talk about Pitt.
We can skip that part.
Dan and I've been, Epler, we won't go in depth about it. I've discovered some things about Pitt and how things may have been going and behind the scenes of Pitt that, Dan, we'll get to that in one moment, but let's finish this Will Howard thought. Man, he's balling right now. Kyle McCord, I was glad to see him do what he did because I never thought he was really that bad. He did have a terrible game against Pitt, but I never thought he was that bad. I thought he was actually pretty solid. I think he'll get some sort of pro opportunity, obviously. Trying to get him on this podcast. But Will Howard, man, he was balling out yesterday against Oregon. And that's a fun story, too, to see how he went from Kansas State to now he might be playing a national title game, your quarterback for Pennsylvania.
The way McCord was just disassembled by Ohio State people was just a travesty. I mean, the kid goes 12-1. You know, yes, they lose to Michigan. I get it. But, you know, just to absolutely be on the outs from everybody in that godforsaken city, you know, after going 12-1. Is just absolutely ridiculous.
I'm convinced that that's the craziest fan base in the country. Like after seeing some of their reactions to like games they win, I think they might have surpassed some of the SEC schools as the most like insane fan base in the country.
Listen, even 100,000 Penn State fans weren't sure about Drew Aller, at least rooted for the kid.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Originally, and now, I mean, I think Aller's done tremendous.
Yeah.
I think he's been unbelievable this season, and he made some throws in that game. I'm sorry, but maybe only guys like Will Howard and maybe 2 other guys that I've seen in college football make those throws.
Yeah.
I mean, they were perfect throws. The first 2 touchdowns in that game, Tom Brady couldn't have thrown those passes any better.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's done that at least once or twice every game that I've watched Penn State, and I've watched them all. I mean, obviously Singleton and Allen get justifiably get a lot of the credit. But, man, that kid's been really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're Bo Pribula, are you wondering if you regret entering the portal a little early? Not because you left the team hanging, but because I've seen some buzz that they don't care what Aller said to Franklin, that if a team tells them, hey, we're going to pick you, we'd pick you. If we get the 2nd overall pick, we'll pick you. Like, is he going to reconsider and leave? Like, I don't think he would, but you never know. And like, I mean, I heard the number Pribula got apparently from Missouri is 7 figures. So,
well, listen, these guys, everybody talks about, it's a money grab now and that portal. These guys have to do that.
Yeah, it's not a money grab. It's a
right move to do.
It's a depth. It's a depth chart. Right? You have to get in there to.
Yeah, it's absolutely the right thing to do. And it's, a guy like Pribula probably is not going to make the NFL. I'm not saying he won't, but I'm saying it's probably a long shot for him to, latch onto a roster. So, yeah, why would you not do that? Why would you not move, take the money, play another season? Obviously, Missouri's a good franchise. You're going to have some success, get a kickstart on life after football.
It's just funny that the reason he left, he would have stayed at Penn State if Aller was gone, and Aller said he's staying. And now, if they make it all the way and even win the championship, there's going to be some push to get Aller to go to the NFL because he's played that well.
Yes, I agree completely. Yep.
I mean, I'll be the first to say this time last year, I wasn't as high on Aller. I thought he had.
I don't think anybody was.
No. A lot of people try to blame him on his wide receivers and saying they weren't getting separation.
No, he wasn't.
But I felt like he was not overly accurate at times. It felt like he was just kind of wing. But, like you said, Epler, he's thrown some dots this year. And
he's a big kid, too. He's really big. Like,
I always tell people I don't have a problem saying I was wrong about something if a guy goes out and does it.
Yeah.
I don't know that I was wrong, though. Like you said, Epler, I don't know I was wrong this time last year, but he's dialed in.
Well, I mean, the offensive line situation was different last year. Singleton busted a lot of big plays. So it was those kind of, I just think for all the flack that kid took, and yeah, okay, you come in as a 5-star, you're coming in with unbelievably grand expectations. The first year or two, I mean, I don't know how he could have lived up to it. That kind of pressure, being a 5-star kid, but he's done it. This year, I think he's been absolutely the difference.
And speaking of PA high school kids too, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a Patriots fan, and as of now, they have the number one pick, and Patriots fans are doing the whole trade down things and everything. But
Right.
a popular name circulating for Patriots that just anyone in the top 5 there is LaSalle's own Abdul Carter. I think we all thought he was going to be really good. I don't know if you guys thought he was going to be like top 5 pick in the NFL draft level good. He's been that, and like he's been about as productive as, guys like Parsons. People have been comparing him to Parsons. I obviously didn't cover Parsons as close as you did. I don't think he's quite the athlete Micah was, but in terms of production and versatility, he's been that. He's a little small, I feel like, for a pass rusher to be going top 5, but at some point, it doesn't seem like anyone can block that kid either.
So this is a true story, and you can go back and you can look it up, and it's all there in black and white. When we were doing the high school rankings, and we did not do them this year, but we're picking them back up next year, really going in depth on it. We consistently had him ranked in the top 5 in the state. And there was a linebacker who ended up, I won't out the kid because he was a good player. Everybody had way higher than Abdul Carter, except for us.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I called Greg Pickle, Epler, and I said, Greg, this is actually even before Penn State offered him. I said, Greg, tell me if I'm crazy. Go watch this kid Abdul Carter's film. And I sent it to him, the huddle. I said, is he just not, he's nasty, right? Am I wrong? And Greg was like, yeah, he's pretty good. And now he's Abdul Carter. I've always thought he was really good, really explosive. And there's a local connection, obviously, with Central Pennsylvania, that he's trained a good deal with Lance Dean, who was sent to see the East coach and is now Susquehanna Township's athletic director, I think, starting in January here. Interesting there. But Dan, I'm really hoping you guys do what Nick Wright said and trade away Drake May and draft Shador 1, Travis Hunter 2, and then make Dion your coach.
As mad as it take maybe the organization is like so incompetent at this point that's probably what they're going to do, because they just genuinely have they probably turned on the TV and saw that, or like, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that, because that's how it feels like ever since.
You would be the most watched team in America next year.
Yeah, that's what the Patriots are going for, right? They not wins or losses, just watch the car crash.
Look, we back to Colin McCord real quick. We're doing a weave here. Not a big Donald Trump guy myself. Great for him being the future president. But, he always talks about the weave. I feel like we've done a weave here to get back to Colin McCord. I think his biggest sin was just not being C.J. Stroud. He had pretty solid numbers, and he ended up at Syracuse, had a good year. Will Howard, that's going to be exciting to watch. Penn State's got a shot to, they could get there, right? It's going to be fun watching these playoffs play out here. We got Sugar Bowl coming up, as we said today. I also want to say, I just did a story about Ryan Quigley.
Yeah, I saw that. I hadn't seen that he was involved in it. That's awful.
Yeah, Lansdale Catholic, former star there. He was a Catholic League MVP, I think, in like 2016. Played at Princeton, I believe, with Tiger Becht, a wide receiver there who got killed in this terror attack in New Orleans. And Ryan Quigley apparently got injured. The GoFundMe says that he's doing well. He's got family and friends with him, but that's terrible to see. Obviously, things come back and, close to home. And actually, we had I just saw on Facebook, I think we had a local basketball coach I'll tell you guys about there, who was actually in New Orleans down near Bourbon Street when this happened. He posted some video. Just a crazy time. And our thoughts go out to the Quigley family, and even the Tiger Beck family, even though he's not a PA high school kid. Terrible there. So that's some sort of breaking news, stuff that we found out as we come on. One other thing I want to touch about before we kind of dove into some high school football, we just got the news too that Eagles are not going to let your former Whitehall and Penn State running back Saquon Barkley go after the record here. Eric Dickerson's rushing record. How are we feeling about that, guys?
I think my feelings are a little twofold, because, part of it, like I've never been a huge fan of like, and I get there's no real way of doing it. And then when Dickerson broke the record, he played a game more than Jim Brown did. But it always feels like these records being set because the season is expanded by a game kind of feels a little like off to me. So in that regard, it's like, I kind of would have rather him broken it by this week so that way it wouldn't be an issue. But then there's the other part of me that's too like, if it's there for the taking and you can take it and you're not like expressly, I think if Sirianni come out and said, we respect Eric Dickerson's record coming in this many games and we're going to leave it be. And like, but if the justification being we want to rest him, I feel like doesn't sit right with me. And I feel like if it's there for the taking and you're not like that, and you're not going to treat the record like with some sort, which I don't think you should as a player, shouldn't be your concern. He's not going to get hurt playing like an extra game against these backups. Like you'd probably get that with that offensive line going against the Giants, you probably get that in like a half of football. Although your Colts had some issues with them last week, but
they folded up. They folded up. I mean, they're done. Pat McAfee's right.
Like, I don't know. I did see someone say that we're kind of losing track a little bit, like that this Super Bowl or bust culture is kind of broken some stuff we like about football and turning the end of the seasons into like kind of jokes. And I kind of do get that argument. It definitely makes a pretty boring Week 18 even more boring. And also, we're not even going to get Kenny Pickett out there either. We're probably going to get Tanner McKee. So.
Well, one thing real quick on the Barkley thing, a lot of people said that, he's played these extra games, but he does have 32 less carries than Dickerson had at the moment.
That's fair.
So I don't think it would have been, I don't think it would have delegitimized the record in my mind if he would have went out and broke it with a similar amount of carries.
Games are a little different to me though than carries because, it's different teams you have to go up against and everything. And like you get more opportunities to go against bad defenses, things like that. But it wouldn't have it definitely would have been a legitimate record. It's just always, it's the inevitability of these sports constantly expanding how many games they're going to play. All these records are going to be broken eventually. It's like how every college record now, like half of these college records now are going to be unbreakable. It's going to be all these kids who played 5 years or 6 years because of COVID. So, it's just at some point it just becomes a number, right? So I agree.
Well, Epler, it's a tough decision, Epler, because I was going to go to here. It's a tough decision because, I think you got to let the player make the call, but at the same time, you would like to, do you want to go and make history, right? But the Eagles aren't going to. The Eagles with Saquon Barkley, they might get there. The Eagles without Saquon, with Kenneth Gainwell, aren't getting there, right? I mean, so what are you feeling there, Up?
I think you're right. I think it's it's a conversation you have with Saquon and say, listen, if this is really important to you, I mean, what you've done for the franchise this year is ridiculous. And give him the option. I knowing what Saquon, is kind of all about, I think he would say, listen, you guys make the call. I'm fine either way.
That's what I think happened. Yeah. I think he wanted it, but doesn't care.
I think it's just, as far as I know, and don't quote me on this, but they didn't always play 162 baseball games this season either.
No.
So all those records, you go from Babe Ruth to Mantle and all these guys too, they were doing it in less games. So I don't care about that one extra game or 16 minutes of football. But I think that's what happened. I think they just said, listen, what do you want to do? And this is where we're at. But if you say, listen, I want to go out and get my, what is it, 132? What does he need?
I think it's only like 100, like 100 something.
Yeah. Then obviously that's what we'll do. And for the life of me, I don't know why Barkley's not the favorite to win the, to be player of the year. I don't get that. I don't know. I know it's a quarterback, award.
He'll win offensive player of the year because that's how they clean their hands.
All right. That's how they justify it. But I mean, how has he not been as good or better than Lamar Jackson or anybody else who's up there? MVP. I don't get it. But I don't have a vote, so they don't ask me. They don't call me up and say, "But what should we do?"
Not yet.
It's Saquon and Josh Allen Bills
Yeah.
quarterback has been unreal, and then Lamar. I think those are the three for me.
Some people making the Burrow argument too recently, which I'm not sure how I feel about, because I think you could make an argument that Burrow's not even the most valuable player to that offense. I think Burrow's a very good player, but I think Jamar Chase is like,
Mark Chase is phenomenal. I
he just
mean,
makes everybody's job on that
yeah,
offense so much
but
easier.
they basically have to score every possession to win. That's the other part of that equation. But yeah, I think Burrow can be in the discussion, but I think he's, as far as being behind Allen and Jackson, that's certainly where he should be. But to me, Barkley should be the favorite right
Yeah.
now, you know, for
I
getting over.
got to go to the Commanders-Eagles game a couple weeks ago, and just seeing that guy in person again. Like, I've seen him in person a couple times, but when you see a running back like that in person, and you just
Yeah.
see how big they are and how quick he can cut, and then immediately it is like incredible. Like, because we obviously cover high school football, right? We see some good football players, but then when you kind of see, a stable in the back like that, it
Oh, yeah, we talked about this before, Dan. The first time you see these guys on the field, you're standing on the sidelines and they run by you, and you're like, okay, we get it.
yeah.
That's what that looks like.
I've just
And it,
never seen someone move like cut like Barkley does ever. Like, at that size, to be able to cut and not slow down at all is like alien.
yeah,
And they were talking about too. They said, like, on the broadcast, talking about how, in high school he was a good, not great football player, which I don't know if maybe he's underselling him a little bit, because I wasn't here when he was in high school, but um, it always kind of felt to me he was more like a traits guy than he was some like dominant force at Whitehall.
yeah. Well, he
I don't.
wasn't.
I don't think his
Wasn't
team was very good,
he
right?
was,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, he got jacked when he went to Penn State. I
yeah.
mean, like he was, he was sort of an undersized kid, just a good football player, Whitehall, but nothing you would sit there and go. But then once he got to Penn State, got on the regiment, and just became jacked to all
It's
hell.
why the recruiting stuff, it's so hard to do it from high school, right? Because you don't know how kids are going to get to that next level and how they're going to improve when they're put in that pro hamster wheel, so to speak, right? And
Yes.
that's basically what these high level programs are right now. They're basically going through pro level training in college now. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, it's a
Well,
pretty good development story there.
which, as we do the weave, brings us back to Pitt and everything I've been discovering about Pitt and what has gone on behind the scenes in years past. Epler, we won't get too in depth there as to not cause social media meltdowns. But Dan, what is going on? What has happened behind the scenes with the Pitt Panthers the last 8 or 9 years? What am I seeing, Dan?
Well, over the last 8, 9 years, we've won an ACC. The Pitt has won an ACC title. Let's not forget that we are a conference champion over the last 8 or 9 years.
Knowing that you know what I'm talking about, knowing what we won't go to it, but that makes that even more impressive.
I'll boil it down to this: the University of Pittsburgh does not get the best players from the city of Pittsburgh. Like, they don't get they don't get the best players from the Whippeal anymore. They get a couple of them when they transfer out of the portal. Now they've become the second, the safe landing spot for guys like Donovan McMillan, who did really well at Pitt. Now has a chance to make his way to the NFL. Derek Davis ended up there, tore his ACL this year, unfortunately, but I mean, it's been the story even longer than that. For a while, it wasn't Penn State and it's still not really Penn State that's doing. It was Notre Dame for a while that was kind of poaching the top guys from
Michigan,
Pittsburgh. Michigan now, like when if Pitt is ever going to be, a consistently top program in football ever again, they have to keep the top kids in the Whippeal home, and they just don't do that anymore. And yeah, it's hard. It's not any real blame to go around. Just the way the sport is. But
Epler, I have got to fill you in on the insanity that I've uncovered that was apparently within the program at some point.
Listen, I'm a closet Pitt fan. I don't openly root for them, but I like the chaos. I like I like the chaos around that program. I like Narduzzi. I think anything can happen there.
That is true. You,
You know,
you nailed that one right.
yeah, I don't, again, it's consistency is boring when it comes to, it
Who needs
is.
consistency when you can wait an entire half, start a walk-on
Yeah,
sophomore quarterback until you realize we should probably just put in Julian Duggar, who's way better than this kid.
listen,
Let Julian Duggar play. Julian Duggar plays really well. And then in overtime, don't give him a chance to win the football game.
Yeah.
And
Lose to Toledo in 13 overtimes.
I started embracing the chaos at Pitt when Sunseri was the quarterback.
who's now a UCLA's offensive coordinator.
Exactly. And
He's about
it was just fun because every snap you absolutely didn't know
could be a
anything
pick six.
to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
I will say about Julian Duggar though, my bold prediction for next year is he's not going to be a starter. He's obviously former Penn Hills quarterback. Was a pretty fun player there. Not many people, not many offers from Power Five. Pitt was one of them, and he committed pretty soon after. I wonder if they're going to use him, going to try to copy the Bo Prabula playbook a little bit and kind of use him as a change of pace quarterback, because you kind of have to do that now, right? If you have a talented younger quarterback, you got to get him some stats to keep him happy. I thought he played pretty well considering it's his first career. I know Brian, you thought he was a pretty good player at Penn Hills, but he's definitely got some athleticism, some burst at that size.
The crazy thing about him is he's at Penn Hills and he was only throwing for like 140, 150, 160 yards a game. Like he wasn't putting up huge passing numbers, but he's a long athletic kid, and yeah, he can sling it. It's just he was always this intriguing guy, and I don't know why I didn't put up bigger passing numbers. Maybe it was just I didn't watch it like their games.
Yeah.
Through. I watched the film, but he looked good when he came in. Yeah, no doubt.
And they've also lost 2 more corners to the portal, so Sean Lee Jr. might be starting at corner next year. So
yeah,
hey, he looked. We need to circle back on him and get a story with him because he looked really good. His prep school film is really good at corner, like really, really good.
Yeah.
Like Sean Lee may be a real big steal for Pitt at corner.
Yeah. I think we all kind of figured that. I mean, it goes back to kind of what we talked about, right? Is sometimes these kids that do everything for their program, you kind of miss some of the things that they do really well because they have to do everything. And sometimes you miss the force for if Pat Narduzzi's or I think it was the D-backs coach for Pitt, Corey Sanders, said one of the reasons they started recruiting Sean Lee hard and started looking at him hard was that LaShawn McCoy called him up and said, you gotta go hard after Sean Lee Jr. He's a really good D-back, and they started pursuing him pretty hard after that. So,
for people who don't know, he was supposed to be Harrisburg's quarterback this year, ruled ineligible before the season, ended up playing a year at prep school. Now he's going to Pitt. Speaking of Harrisburg, again, before we're going to talk a little bit, folks, about some of these all-state, the Riders all-state teams came out, and we did the all-PA team. We'll touch on that for a minute too. Our Mid-Penn all-stars. We're kind of going to look at those all-stars real quick. I think next week we could probably just talk about our players to watch, maybe our 2025 football players to watch, kind of look ahead a little bit. But so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But one more thing I wanted to talk on, we had another PA guy making some big headlines, and boy, he was cooking. The Dallas Cowboys lose to the Philadelphia Eagles 41-7. And I love Micah Parsons, but he sits down in front of the reporters and he says, if you would have took away the scoreboard, really wasn't that bad of a game. They only had like 2 good runs, 3 long passes. And boy, he got roasted for that. And then I think the point he was making is, that, they only had a couple busted, but you know what? 3 long passes or 2 big runs, that's 35 points in football. I don't know. Did you guys see that? How'd you feel about it?
I think
my guy Micah,
you've kind of said it before. I think that Micah has never really been in a losing. I think he's learning he's kind of trying to find ways, right, to deal with losing. because he's never been on a team that's been this kind of out of it this quickly, right? And so I think you would say Micah for the most part's a pretty like positive person. Like I know he can get frustrated during the game, but I feel
Mhm.
like that's also at least my vibe is he tries to be like optimistic and positive. Like you see when he's defended Daniel Jones and everything, and guys that kind of everyone's given up on. He's saying he'll defend people and things like that. I do think he's trying to find like the silver linings in some of this stuff, and um, it is funny though because you kind of forget about that when you look at the NFL. You forget how many of these guys have literally never been on a bad team ever ever until they get to the only league where everything's kind of even. And so that was kind of my read that he's like, listen, I've got to figure out a way to in my head like be able to cope with the fact that I'm not playing competitive football this time of year. So I mean, I also think he was doing it to kind of back his team. He does seem to be pretty defensive. He also gave a pretty interesting interview talking about his future contract, right, where he said doesn't need to be the highest paid player, and that his agent was going to get really mad at him for saying that. Um, I do think for the most part, Micah is all about the right things and is like, I think all he cares about is winning. And so when you take that away, his brain kind of breaks a little bit. And I think we saw that at interview a little.
I don't know if you guys saw it, but as bad as their defense has been, yeah, he got hurt and he went out those couple of games. When he came back, like their pressure rates and stuff went like to the top of the NFL. I still think, I think you're right about that, Dan. He's never really lost. He does not like to lose. He did get cooked a little bit for that. The quote after the Eagles game, but I, I think he's still definitely an elite player, still definitely explosive. I think that defense is really bad. I think they're very soft in the middle. Van Der Esch getting hurt last year, I think started kind of a slip there. I don't know that they did the Mozzie Smith pick has exactly been great for them because they needed to be tough on the inside, and I don't know that he's got it. They're very soft in the middle, and they're beat up. I don't know that Dallas is a great place to be the next couple of years the way Jerry Jones is operating either. He's talking about bringing McCarthy back, and I feel like I could say this from a Colts fan with Reich. I used to say this like when Frank Reich was there, the Colts would show up and just not show up for some games. And Dallas sometimes just doesn't show up.
Well, the Patriots have a lot of salary cap if he would like to play for our sterling organization. I'm sure.
I mean, you don't have, it's not like he's not out there making headlines for horrible things. You know what I mean? He's only what, 24, 25 still.
Yeah.
He's still trying to figure out everything surrounding who he is. Because now it's not even national now, it's global now. You know what I mean? Because he's one of the best in the game. So, but as you go on and play more football too, teams figure out how to game plan against you, and there's certain matchups that aren't good for Micah. And that's just every NFL player goes through that. But I mean, it's not, again, was it a great optic of him walking off early, or leaving the field early? No, not much. But it's not like he's out there, doing really, really bad things, getting away with it. I mean, he's just, I think Dan's right. He's frustrated. This is a frustrating season to go through. I don't see him taking plays off. I still see him giving max effort on every time I watch the Cowboys play. But he's not stacking up 12, 13 tackles a game either. So that's frustrating. QB hurries are nice, but that means he didn't get there. And Micah's not used to not getting there.
Yeah.
So I just think all those things, and obviously being not having a great record and not going to be in the playoffs, all those things. When that 4 or 5 games left in the season, I would imagine it's hard to be motivated 24 hours a day.
He really is down. People say that great players, like they talk about Lawrence, but he really is down to sort of being their one threat on defense. Like I think I don't know that they're worrying about anybody else but Micah Parsons now. Like you don't
Right.
have, Lawrence is out, right? Everybody's out. That's any good.
The overshown who kind of emerged.
Yeah, everybody's hurt for them except for him.
He did
So
injure Kenny Pickett. He rebroke his ribs. So
yeah, Dan wasn't
no,
like I
it
said,
was a clean hit. It was like
Micah's our guy, but Dan wasn't happy with them because he did
no,
hurt.
it was
Dan's
actually like a textbook QB hurry where he let up and he's still. I think it's just still he's that athletic. When Micah even shoves you like that, if you have busted ribs, it's going to hurt you a little more. But he did knock him out.
and now the
They're
Eagles
pretty
might
good
start
half
this,
football for Kenny.
and now the Eagles might start what Tanner McKee.
He's not bad. They've got a bunch of solid. I mean, that team's pretty loaded right now.
Hey, listen, through all the turmoil, he still was out there passing out turkeys on Thanksgiving and
Yeah.
Oh, he was dressed
you
up.
know what I mean? So you can't not like the guy.
Yeah.
I love Mike. I love Mike. Like I told you guys, we never ask anybody for anything. But when I was sick and possibly dying, I looked up one day and Micah was telling people to go donate to my my GoFundMe. He really does have a big heart. And he's got that new lion. Something. He's got a new charity out where he was, like you said, dressed up as Santa Claus over the Christmas holiday, handing out toys and stuff. He's done some good stuff in the area here. So I will say, Dan, if you follow Michael's brother on social media, he thinks that all those other Eagles quarterbacks are actually better than Jalen Hurts. Not a big Jalen Hurts guy over on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said something about how Kenny Pickett is a less athletic Jalen Hurts, and as someone who's watched a lot of Kenny Pickett, and has watched a decent amount of Jalen Hurts, I'm not really following that comparison. I don't think they play anything alike.
Not a logical thought, no.
But I respect
Terrence,
opinion. Maybe he sees something different than I did.
Terrence Parsons did beat me pretty good in EA Sports College Football, which I tried to get Dan to line up a bowl game, Epler, but he won't play me.
I retired on top.
He won't put the guys on the bus and come play in the bowl game.
I've had enough college. I've had enough. I've watched enough college football. Enough college football I'm invested in for like the rest of my life after the way this Pitt season went. So,
hey, let's talk about these all-state teams real quick. Get into that. We're already at 40 minutes. We're only supposed to do contractually obligated to do like 30. We don't have to break them all down. We did do our all Pennsylvania team. Stone Saunders was the player of the year there. Felt like he was a pretty natural pick. There were some other kids that were in the discussion. But he broke all the past records, the Bishop McDevitt kid. You can check out that online. But I wanted to talk to you about the Riders all-state teams. Epler, I know you play a big role in that every year, putting it together. Looking at that, like I said, we don't have to break all of them down because we could be here another hour and a half doing that. And they're all on PennLive.com. You can go there, and if you can't find them on the high school sports page, because we have been covering a lot of basketball and stuff, and these came out last week, right, Ep?
Yes, they came out. Wait, what's today? 26 and 27.
So they maybe moved down our high school sports page a little bit, but you can also search Eric Epler, PennLive. They're all under his name there. You could pull them up if you missed the all-state teams. I know Epler does a lot of coordination, getting input from writers all over the state in this. And we've told that story before too, but just looking at these teams, any surprises this year stand out in you guys' minds? Any kids that didn't make it you thought maybe should have? People think that just because you put it together, Ep, that like maybe these are our picks, but we get kids too who we think are snubbed. Every writer, I think, has a couple kids that they wish would have made it, that they nominated or whatever, or just kids from around the state. But anything standing out about these teams this year, guys? Anybody we think we wish we would have saw in there, or anything like that? How do we feel about this year's crop?
As far as like the top end, the players of the year, I mean, I thought having Charlie Falk, the St. Joe's Prep quarterback in 6A, I think was a little bit of a surprise. Not that he didn't have a great year.
That surprised me.
that you have a quarterback situation at 6A where you're looking at Eddie Corkery of State College. You're looking at Gavin Sidwar of LaSalle College, Jair Rawls out of Pittsburgh Central Catholic, and a couple other good guys, Nazareth, Peyton Falzone at Nazareth. Those 5 guys, adding Falk, were the quarterbacks for 6A. And for Falk to get the most votes, I thought was a little surprising. Obviously, he's a sophomore. First year as a full-time starter under center. It's a good position to be in when you're throwing to the talent and handing off to the talent at St. Joe's Prep. So that obviously helps. But I thought Sidwar would probably emerge as that player of the year. He certainly deserved it. Obviously beat St. Joe's Prep and whaled a game in the second one. It was sort of a shame that those guys had to meet in the PCL and, basically what equates to the first round, which is the District 12 title game against St. Joe's Prep. Because I think many believe that they were 1-2 in the state. In fact, I had them 1-2 in the state all the way until the state final in the rankings, because obviously
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that seems pretty clear to me at this point, right?
It was pretty clear, absolutely. So, but yeah, so that was a little bit of a surprise for me. There were a couple of our guys I thought might squeeze on there. We talked about Carter McCauley in 4A for Greencastle Antrim, had a tremendous year at wide receiver. And Torrin Evans is another guy for Susquehanna Township quarterback, was in the mix, but ultimately just, came up a little bit short. So those are the guys to me that I thought had good chances. And again, I always tell people, I don't even vote. You guys vote for PennLive. I simply coordinate everything, put the ballots together, format everything, and then obviously splice the teams together based on votes. We did have 1 or 2 extra guys in 3A, and you guys saw the ballots. 3A was the largest ballot that I think I ever produced in 14 or 15 years doing this. We had over 100 nominations in 3A, so it was tough to get that down. We had 3 ties. And for those who don't know, I do not break ties. I don't think it's my place to say, hey, listen, I think this kid's better, so he's going to get the 5th spot. Instead, they go 5th spot, 6th spot. Boom, they make it on. So we built in wiggle room with those. But there is some manipulation you have to do to sort of balance out the teams. In other words, we may have 7 qualifying running backs. So maybe we move 2 of those guys to athletes, who did a little bit of everything for their team. So other than that, I think players of the year were dead on, as expected. Let's put it that way. In 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
One of my takeaways too, and I think it's something we all know, but man, the postseason is just really important to get like this to kind of decide these things, right? Because even when we're talking about Stone as our overall player of the year, I don't think he's the state player of the year necessarily if they don't win the state title, right? It's at least much more of a discussion. I think it was kind of a layup when he played as well as he did in those last couple games to kind of go along with all the records and everything. But when you kind of finish the season the way they do, it's just the way any voting works. That's why a lot of these pro sports don't vote into the playoffs. And I go back and forth on it because sometimes I'm like, it's kind of silly, right? Because it's still part of the year and it's part of your body of work for that year. And then you look silly in a couple weeks when you pick a guy and they lose in the first round or something like that. You look at a guy like Eli Zimmerman. I mean, I think he was probably on his way to winning regardless, but there's no doubt after you watch that state championship game that kid's the best player in 3A. Like it might be. I don't buy the 5'8" listening. Sorry if you're listening, Eli. I think he might be a little shorter than that, but I think he plays like he's 6'3" and was as important. Probably, I would argue, as important to his team as any player in the entire state in any classification. You get guys like Stone. Obviously, that's probably why Charlie Folk won it, right? Is because he finished the job, and then a guy like Billups too, earning that spot after a tremendous run where he went into the year people not even thinking he was their top running back, right? With Isaiah West, the Ohio State commit, and he just comes in. So it's always, I mean, it's just classic lesson to, these games, even if you're not going to win a state title, they really matter. Um, you know,
Well,
it's always, you're always playing for something. And I just wanted to give it, because I was just so blown away by watching. I'd never seen Eli Zimmerman play in person, and it kind of reminded me a little different kind of player, but the same type of like Ryan Palmieri at Pine Ridge, where some of these kids who can't be any bigger than me, but play about as physical as, like an NFL safety or something, is always a sight to behold. And you do all it. That's always a cool thing about breaking it down into these classes. You got to recognize kids like that.
well, you can always, the thing too about the end, and you mentioned being successful in the postseason, Dan. Everybody can put their eyes on the 12 finals.
Yeah.
Right. You can watch the games. You can watch them 3 days later if you wanted to kind of get a sense for this. And the nominations start coming in the days after the championship games. So that information in your brain is fresh too.
Yeah.
You just saw Eli Zimmerman. You go, okay, I get it. That's the kid that's going to be player of the year in 3A. So I think that's a big part of it. More of these playoff games are being streamed now, so you can get them back a few more rounds and start to follow them.
And it just becomes talk of the town, right? A little bit, like it's a little like whispered down the lane in media. Everyone's like, "Hey, did you see that? Did you watch that Northwestern Lehigh championship game?" And everyone starts like, "Man, that Zimmerman kid's special." And and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, because I think that's why we play these football. That's why you play 16 games a year, right? Is to be that kid at the end of the year that everyone's talking about.
Well, plus it's not just for guys like Zimmerman.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking at Northwestern Lehigh, you're trying to say, okay, 6 kids from Northwestern Lehigh were selected out of 40 for the team. Well, you also get a glimpse at those guys and linemen, linebackers, things like that. You guys know,
Yeah.
when these ballots come out, the 2 heaviest positions are running back and linebacker.
Yeah.
That's Pennsylvania football. That's where we're heavy. So, I think 2A linebacker had 19 or 20 nominations. So, and we've got to get that down to 5 or 6 picks. So now maybe, let's say the kid who came in 7th in voting, well, he might also play running back.
Yeah.
He may also be an offensive or defensive athlete. He may have lined up in several different positions on defense, put his hand to the ground, back up, maybe play outside linebacker. So those types of things too all factor in for getting, the right, quote unquote, the right kids. It's not a perfect scientific formula, obviously, but the fact that you have, right around 50 writers from around the state, all pockets of the state. Yes, when the ballots come out, they're going to pick the guys they nominated, but they're also forced to pick 3 or 4 other guys at each position. And all of that's where everything equals itself out, and we put the teams together. So I was very happy looking at it as a fan and seeing the football that I saw. I thought this year we were very good. It was very good. The final teams were great. I really believe that. And like I said, there's always kids that had tremendous seasons that don't make it. But that's the process. The more you add, it's sort of the less value, I guess, the pick is. So we try to keep it inside that number and make it an exclusive club.
Yeah, I always do that, statewide top performances. We have sometimes 200 names a week. So I think I'm always like bothering up, trying to politic to get 1 or 2 more guys on there from guys. But Eli was one of those guys who, he would have a big game rushing and receiving every week and on defense. He'd also have like 12 tackles, and he's 5'7", and he's just one of those great high school football player stories.
I mean, look at Ty Salazar from State College. I mean, obviously we were wowed by that kid all year long as a wide receiver. The work he did as a defensive back was almost overshadowed by the fact that he was so dominant on the offensive side. But in reality, he very easily could have been named as a defensive back, and fit right in.
Coke, right?
When we were having that discussion with our mid-pen all-stars, where I initially said, just put him at defensive back because he was so good there. And we ended up moving Elias Koch, I think, to defensive back, right? Epler.
Yeah.
He had 5 interceptions. He was good too.
Yep.
But Elias, and for people who don't know, Elias may be, I mean, he's probably a top 4 receiver in the state, right? I mean,
especially after that postseason. Hard to.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But
So
I saw some Harrisburg people kind of, in our comments, kind of talking about for our mid Penn teams talking about they were kind of, I don't know if it was confused is the right word. They were maybe even you could say kind of criticizing the offensive picks, and then I think people were kind of saying, no, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get as many names as possible on this list, as many deserving names, and so
yeah.
I think we can kind of say between all of us. I don't think there's anything wrong with how doing it at all. I think the way we do it is we're just trying to basically get the best football players. This isn't the NFL where people are playing one position. We're trying if you just put players at their best position, most of these kids are going to be
So
it's going to be hard not to put these kids at wide receiver because that's what people know them for.
So Epler ended up writing the team this year, folks. You can go back and find it on Penn Live too. I've done it the past years, but one of the tricks is trying to, all right, here's a for instance. So wide receiver, we had 3 kids, Jonte Quick at Bishop McDevitt, Dom Diaz-Ellis at Bishop McDevitt, and Ty Salazar at State College. All 3 of those kids are in the top 5 in receiving yardage in the state.
Right.
For max preps. Now, Elias Cope is probably better than all 3 of those kids as far as a prospect talent-wise. And maybe if I had, and look, this is not knocking them. I think Dom Diaz-Ellis is going to be a heck of a college player somewhere. He's a senior. He hasn't signed yet. Somebody's going to get a good player with him. Jonte Quick, you guys know in our text messages, I love, and we all shoot, not just me. I think we all love that kid as a sophomore. And Ty Salazar has been one of the best 2-way guys. So I'm not knocking them, but if I had, to make one play to throw to one wide receiver in the mid-pen, it probably would be Elias Koch over at Harrisburg. Now, Elias, and by the way, Tanny Young, who was, I think, on our second team, Santana Young, was an all-state player too, I believe, right? Epler at CD East, who had an amazing year. It was a stacked year for wide receivers.
Which we don't always get, I feel like, either.
So, you don't want to put, and Santana Young, because we only took 3 receivers, right, Epler, or 4? 3?
There were 3,
and on the first team. So Santana Young ended up on the second team. Most years, he's going to be a first team, and he was an all-state player on the Riders team. So we have 3 receivers there. You can't really cut out the three guys, 3 guys who are in the top 5 in the state. So we look and say, well, you know what? Elias had 5 picks. He's an amazing player, at defensive back too. So we'll put him over at defensive back. And that's how that works, folks. We are trying to get deserving kids on that first team. I feel bad Santana Young didn't make it, but we only took 3. But he did make second team. He had a heck of a year, but that's kind of some insight into that.
Yeah, it's almost like a logic puzzle, right? Like where you're like one of those where you're trying to it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You're just trying to find a way to kind of reflect what the year who were the most impressive football players in our area. And sometimes we're gonna have to put a guy like Elias Koch at DB and be like right in the blurb. He's also could be the best wide receiver in the state too, but and he was also just as deserving as he was awesome as a safety this year. I know you covered a lot of their games. He was I think he played a little bit of safety last year, but this year I think he really came into his own as kind of, you could argue, a real anchor in that defensive backfield along with Quincy Brandon. So it's just like it's just the way we try to make these things all coalesce.
I wanted to circle back real quick to the Riders 6A All-State team. You guys mentioned, how state can really play in if Gavin Sidbar and LaSalle would have beat St. Joe's, he might have been our All-PA player of the year too. He had a really good year. I think LaSalle was the second best team, and really they might have been the best team. They beat St. Joe's in the regular season, and you can't really say that because St. Joe's beat them when it counted and won the state championship pretty convincingly. But LaSalle, in my mind, might have been the best team in the state. They lost in the playoffs. But, we'll say St. Joe's won it. They earned that right. LaSalle's probably the second best team then, okay? And so I my pick, I think, is 6A. Would have no knock against Charlie Folk. He's a sophomore, had a heck of a year. My pick probably would have been Gavin Sidbar there, but I also really like Joey O'Brien, his wide receiver. I think he had an underrated year. If you go, he's one of the top playmakers in the state at wide receiver. And another guy, Bradley Gompers, was a freaking animal. And I know they lost to St. Joe's, but that kid is, I think Penn State is going to be sad that he got away to Duke.
Well,
if he ends up staying
that's
there.
like another one of those guys. My Western PA ties. People in Pittsburgh have been talking about him since camps this year. Talked about how he was a guy that was way better than his offer sheet. I think there was I think that was another guy too. When I talked about Pitt not getting the best guys in the Whippeal, if Pitt was on a guy like that sooner, he very well could have been a Pitt Panther. I've heard that he's one of the reasons he didn't end up flipping to Penn State, and Penn State's obviously a very good school. But I've heard he's a pretty big. His family really values academics, and you get into Duke full ride playing for Manny Diaz. That's a pretty darn good combination of academics and a system that I think Penn State fans know will have to at least kind of grant that Manny Diaz can call a defense. So I would be stunned if that kid doesn't see the field of me. He also was in Harrisburg this past week while I was off in a pretty fun Catholic school league invitational with McDevitt, LaSalle, and Central Catholic. And he had a game-winning 3 with 20 seconds left to beat McDevitt. Joey O'Brien has been awesome for LaSalle, too, in basketball as well. So some of those 6A guys are really thriving.
If I pick a one wide receiver to stay over Elias, it might be Joey O'Brien.
Yeah.
And so, I think those 3 kids, I think my vote was for Sidbar, but I think those other 2 kids could have been it too. But good for Charlie Folk. The one other thing I wanted to mention is I felt like really through a lot of, not just all-state team, but through, I think, a lot of the all-star teams and stuff, I felt like the Elijah Faulkner kid out of Central Catholic was a really good running back. I think he got snubbed. I think he went over 1,000 yards. I'm not sure he got any kind of real postseason accolades from anyone. And I just wanted to note, I thought that Epler, I know you saw him play a couple times. I thought he was a pretty quick, pretty good football player. And I was a little surprised he didn't get a little bit more postseason love.
Yeah, I think the bulk of his too, and it sort of counters what we were talking about earlier, was that he had a really good postseason. Like postseason, he, obviously I saw him against State College, had a tremendous game there. I think it was 232 yards, 3 or 4 TDs in that one. And obviously had a good game against Harrisburg as well in the semifinals, both games out at, the Ravens Den in Altoona. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think he was sort of the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. He was really, really good. And then obviously they got Thames pretty well against St. Joe's Prep. But again, who doesn't? I mean, the only team that really didn't was, Sidwar and the Explorers. So yeah, I agree with that. I think Faulkner could have been a guy in the mix as well.
Another one real quick that surprised me. And you know what? Good for him, because he really did have a great 2-way year. I actually tried to get him an All-PA, but didn't get him on there. But Austin Johnson was the player of the year from Muncie. I mean, he had over 100 tackles as a linebacker, and he had, I think, over 2,000, probably close to 3,000
I think
rushing
he had
yards.
3,000.
So he had I know Aiden Bliss had 3,000. I don't know if anybody else went over 3,000, but he had a lot. He had a ton of yards. Maybe Dan. It surprised me a little bit, only because I thought, first of all, Matt Sieg was amazing, even though they didn't make it to the state title game, which Muncie didn't either. Matt Sieg was amazing, again at Fort Cherry. So a little bit of a surprise to me, but, and then also I thought Guilfoyle had a couple guys. Chase Kissel and Jake Kissel, I loved their films. They had numbers, both kind of long and athletic kids at Bishop Guilfoyle. And then obviously Aiden Bliss led the state in rushing at Port Allegheny with over 3,000 yards. And he had over 100 tackles. So that kind of surprised me that maybe he didn't get consideration there. Well, he didn't get it. And then Hamilton Gates had a huge year at Bishop Guilfoyle too. I don't know. How did that look at 1A? Did that surprise you? I know Austin Johnson's been a heck of a player, but I felt like that was kind of a crowded field vying for that player of the year spot.
Yeah, player of the year in 1A was, Austin Johnson got a lot of votes. I will say that. Chase Kissel was in the mix for player of the year. You mentioned Sieg. Sieg did have some votes for player of the year. And there were a couple other guys too. I mean, obviously,
No love for Bliss. I mean, he led the state in rushing and had over 100 tackles.
Bliss did get some votes for player of the year. And you also had there was one other guy. I'm drawing a blank here. Who was the other guy in 1A? Give me 10 seconds. I'll think of it.
I mean, Hamilton Gates had a huge year.
The running back for Claret Jones.
Yeah.
Jasir Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I don't have the team in front of me here, but
no, he did that. Not on 1A. 1A. I mean, I'll tell you real quick. Your quarterbacks were Chase Kissel. Yeah. Well, he wasn't on there at running back. Your running backs were Austin Johnson, Aiden Bliss, Raymond Holman from Morrisville.
Well, yeah, no, Jasir was named as an athlete.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he did that Lamont Wade role.
He was named as an athlete.
Yeah. So he was the guy that was there too. But there were about 6 guys, I think, that at least got a vote for player of the year. But obviously Austin Johnson and the year that he had and months he had the lion's share for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at that thing too. The kid at Bishop Canavan, Henry Barbish, 6'5", 245. I think he's going to maybe like one of the service academies. He's a really good defensive end too. I liked him a lot, so I was glad to see him make it. But yeah, look, Aiden Bliss, guys, 3,430 yards rushing, 56 touchdowns. Port Allegheny, 111 tackles.
And he was really good in the state championship game, even though they lost too. He had a really good game as well. So,
well, their offense kind of reminded me of Fort Cherry against Ohio. It was kind of like what, just snap it to Aiden and let him run left or right, pretty much.
Yeah.
So he literally carried that team So I was a little surprised he didn't get more love, but Austin Johnson has had a great career. He's a pretty good wrestler too, right?
Yeah, I think he's even better. He's committed to Oklahoma State, which is about as good as it gets absent Penn State for wrestling at this point. So,
well, listen, we've went over an hour. We kind of talked a little bit about this. Epler put a lot of work into coordinating this. We got that up. We got all PA teams up. We're probably some other sites and entities and stuff that'll have different all-star teams up that we may have some info about on Penn Live at different points as well. Look, we're shifting gears now, guys. It's January. We got another signing day coming up in February. We got a list of really good players, especially in Central Pennsylvania, who have yet to commit or sign. Look, we need to keep track of this portal. I don't know if you saw it, but Tyree Morris, the really good defensive end from Mechanicsburg a couple years back. Yeah. He's been at Lafayette. He went in the portal. He just committed to Utah State. We've had a couple other kids. We've got some really good. Harold O'Neal, you remember him? He's been around a good bit. Great kid. He led Shepherd last year in tackles. He went to Hampton as a grad transfer.
Obviously, Tyshawn Russell to Syracuse
was a big one. I know Nick Sloggett, I think, is from Bishop McDevitt, is now in the portal as well. So we got some really good players in the portal from not just here in Central PA, but all over. Obviously, at one point I saw something like 7,000 kids in the portal. We do need Justin Cook, who's been on this program within the last couple of weeks. Really good player out of East Stroudsburg, who's from Harrisburg. He's looking for a new home. That's something to keep up with. And then we're getting a signing day. Like we said, we got a lot of really good high school players still not committed.
Lek Powell is going to open the year if he's a starter for Charleston Southern. Opens the year at Vanderbilt against a pretty decent Vanderbilt program. So,
former Bishop McDevitt quarterback Lek Powell. Yeah, he went to he's been at Shepherd. He transferred to Charleston Southern. Chance
Shepard's getting a little pipeline. Brady Iser for Gettysburg quarterback just committed to Shepherd.
That's right. That's right.
Days ago, I'll have a little something on him shortly up on Penn Live. But yeah, it was congratulations to him. That's coming a great little pipeline and good for a really solid program.
So people think it's January and football season's over, but it's not really. We got to regroup here at Penn Live. We got to pull together and see where we still have some, like I said, we still have some really good football players looking for places to play, and they'll end up somewhere hopefully in February. And then we got, some guys in the portal from around Pennsylvania we want to highlight. So we'll be doing that work there too. So there'll be a lot of stuff there. These guys are also covering basketball and all kind of other things going on there as well. I think we got a podcast for this week. Dan, anything, we should pump the brakes on? Anything that we're excited about at this time of the year before we go? It's your pump the brakes segment with Dan Sostek. What is something that we're all excited about right now in the sports world that we really shouldn't be excited about?
I'm trying to think. I don't really have much. I saw the Bob Dylan movie, and I liked it. I'm a big Bob Dylan fan, so the movie's okay. Like, it's all right, but Chalamet, I went in kind of skeptical he'd be able to pull it off, and he's great. So that's a reverse Uno card. I like something.
No negative takes for Tyler Warren this week?
I don't have any negative takes for tight end 2 in the NFL draft. So,
hey, where's the card at?
Oh,
look at this, Epler. Look what I sent Dan. Dan's trying to be all, come at me in the text messages, Epler, but I sent him the quarterback he's been talking about all year. I sent him an autographed card.
EY Jew. Only I can say that. You guys don't say that. So
I feel like we're getting into a string of podcasts where I have to note that Dan is Jewish so that we don't get canceled.
Had a great Hanukkah, and that was one to top it off. My parents.
Oh no! The last podcast you just threw Hanukkah under the bus.
That doesn't
mean
I can't enjoy my Hanukkah. That doesn't mean I can't have a good one. My mom made some terrific latkes and some prime rib.
I don't know what is latke.
It's basically a hash brown, but you also cook it with eggs. It's like a potato pancake.
Oh, well, I can get down with that.
Yeah, so it's very, very good.
Sour cream, Dan?
Applesauce is the traditional topping.
Yeah, traditional.
I can just give me the eggs and the hash browns.
Yeah, it's pretty. The egg is used in the batter, so it's just like a patty, pretty, but it's very good.
Dan sent me a text today noting that Tyler Warren was not the top tight end on the Bleacher Report big board.
Yeah, it wasn't the guy I would have number 1 though. I like the Bowling Green guy. It was Michigan's tight end, and Texas's tight end's pretty good too. There's a lot of decent tight ends that were all.
Here we go. He's going to stack them up over Tyler here.
Not that.
Let's get off. We've been over an hour. Megan's waiting on us. Look, PennLive.com is where you can find all of our work. Dan, tell them where to find you and your hot takes on social media.
Dan_Sostek.
Eric, tell them where to find you.
I am at 3Jacker.
And I'm at Sports by B Linder on Twitter. Not calling it X just today. And then Megan, our producer, she's on. Megan, how do they find you?
Savvy literate, pretty much anywhere.
Yeah, and Megan, Megan's out there in the field doing a lot of social stuff too with sports from time to time. So check her out, give her a follow. Again, like I said, PennLive.com. Check us out for all the stuff there. We'll be back next week. I think we're going to maybe turn the page, guys. I think it's a natural and kind of look ahead to some guys we think could be all-state players from the area, maybe beyond next year, some stuff like that in 2025. Maybe some guys to watch. What do you think?
Yeah.
Sound good? We got a podcast. See you guys next week.